Welcome to the evening show with Jackie Brambles, and we are kicking off another great conversation with an iconic group who've sold over 30 million records and had 30 hits across 12 albums. As you may have guessed from our opening track, Na Na Hey Hey Kiss 'Em Goodbye, which got to number 5 in 1983. We are talking about Bananarama, who are celebrating not just 40 years of the band, but even longer than that as the very closest of friends. What a pleasure to welcome Sarah Dallin and Karen Woodward.
Hi, Jackie.
Are you in the same room?
We are together.
Yeah.
All this time I've suspected that you lived together and spent all your... And here I am proven right after 40 years.
Yes, not quite lived together, but...
Well, Karen lives in Cornwall, but she's been staying with me.
Do you know, that warms the very cockles of my heart to hear you say that. When you hear that, you know, the Rolling Stones take their own individual private jets everywhere and really only meet up on stage and things like that.
Oh, wow.
It's so lovely to hear that it's that genuine friendship. Well, that friendship underpins everything, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It does.
Yeah.
It does, indeed.
Do you remember the first time you set eyes on each other? Who wants to start?
Oh, well, Sarah here. Karen and I met at school, infant school. So I remember seeing her in the playground, and we used to play like off-ground touch and things like that. And Karen and I were always really, really fast runners. So, and I remember she had a really lovely collection of hair bobbles on her
I wore
corn-coloured hair.
bunches.
Yeah.
In fact, I wore them below my ears because I was convinced I had sticky out ears, which is really ridiculous because they don't really. And Sarah also, apart from her being incredibly sporty, had beautifully thick, wavy hair. And I was always slightly envious because mine was very straight and thin.
Oh.
So there you go. We had hair envy.
Hair envy, even back then, even at that tender age. Well, listen, we are definitely going to go through those sort of earlier years and influences and things, and to get to where we are today. But let's start in the present moment with huge congratulations to you guys for this celebration of 40 years of a body of work of Bananarama. I know it's the old cliche, and everyone will ask you it, but would you ever have imagined that, you know, we'd all be knocking 60 and you'd still be doing this amazing stuff in the band together?
Do you know what? I don't think any artist thinks they're going to go on for that length of time, and we certainly didn't. Karen and I were teenagers when we started, and I don't think we looked further than the next Saturday night out, really.
Yeah.
So the fact that it did, you know, we wrote a book in the first lockdown, and we had to go back, obviously, from childhood through to, you know, everything we've done.
Yeah.
It made us realise how much we have achieved, and I think particularly as females, because it is slightly harder for women in any industry.
Yeah.
I think for 40 years now, we're really super proud of that.
As well, you should be. And I know that as part of the 40th anniversary celebrations, you've recently re-released reworked versions of Cruel Summer and Venus, as well as the current album Masquerade, which is all new material and was recently released in a clear pink vinyl deluxe unmasked edition. I would imagine that after 40 years, you must have a sense that you have honed your craft over that period of time inestimably. So for you, where does the current album Masquerade stack up in amongst your body of work?
I think it has an 80s vibe in some ways, as a lot of current music does. I mean, The Weeknd and Dua Lipa, when you hear those tracks, you always think, oh my God, they could be released in the 80s, but it's got a modern feel to it. And I think that suits us really well in the album. It's got all those influences. It's quite electro. It's got some 80s kind of vibes. Mostly, I mean, Sarah writes most of the lyrics, and there's a real nostalgia to it as well, because I think in the lockdowns, and as Sarah said, doing the book, there was a lot of reflection on what we'd done in the past and our friendship and what we'd been through together. And then there's also a bit of hope for the future, because we were all in kind of really strange, difficult times, and it was sort of hoping we'd all come out of it. I personally think it's one of the best albums, if not the best album we've made, and it wasn't intentional to make an album to celebrate the 40th. We had lots of various ideas, but because of the period of lockdown where shows and stuff were cancelled, we found ourselves with the freedom to actually spend a bit of time writing and recording in the studio.
All the things you said were nothing to me.
Running with the Night, the latest single from Bananarama's latest album, Masquerade. And I love the album. It's very joyous.
Thank you.
I think really, really joyous. And I think it seems that musicians tend to go one of two ways a little bit at this stage, either sort of slightly beaten by life and a bit cynical, or rediscovering, you know, the joys of life, like we all did when we were younger.
But I think that because of our friendship, but the adventures we've had, I think we're lucky that we've always got each other's back and we're always kind of traveling together. So, I mean, probably a lot harder if you're sort of a solo artist, perhaps. But yeah, I mean, our friendship is real, and that's the essence of our group, really. Do
you remember each of you, the first single that you ever bought? And would you have known each other at that point?
Yes. I think we both loved TK Connection, Do What You Want to Do. It was the first 12-inch vinyl that Karen bought me.
You actually bought me it for my 15th birthday.
Oh, I think you.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we absolutely loved dancing. I think my first single I actually bought with my own money, I think, was Sweet, Blockbuster.
Nice.
We just haven't got a clue what to do.
I'm saving up the pocket money.
Oh, and we loved Bus Stop.
We did. We loved all that sort of funky 70s funk that we listened to. We had at school discos, and we absolutely loved all that stuff. My dad, I remember buying me Sylvester, You Make Me Feel Mighty Real.
We worked out a dance routine on Karen's Landing, and I smashed her mother's
yes, it was a wedding present.
It was a wedding present. Yeah.
We blamed it on my brother and his football, and I think he got a whack for it.
You naughty girls. That's hilarious.
When we're out there dancing on the floor, darling, I feel
Sylvester, You Make Me Feel Mighty Real got to number 8 in 1978 and led to the unfortunate smashing of a wedding present vase due to over-enthusiastic teenage dance gesticulations from Karen and Sarah. And we will be back with more great stories and great conversation and all their musical memories from Bananarama. That's next. Welcome back to the evening show with Jackie Brambles, where it's just you, me, and our very special guests, Sarah Dallin and Karen Woodward of Bananarama, cozying on in for a great conversation. So growing up together as besties, as you did, I'm presuming that you went to your first proper gigs together too. What kinds of music were you into by the time you were old enough to get into venues?
Probably punk gigs. Let's say Generation X, we used to put our school uniforms in a plastic bag because we weren't really old enough to get in. And I remember that, The Police.
Roxy Music we went to see.
Roxy Music, didn't have any tickets, just had to try and bunk in.
We did bunk in.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Talk your way through?
We did bunk in.
That was about Avalon period.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it was a case of putting on high heels and borrowing a handbag and hoping you got in when you were too young.
And you got away with it.
They didn't ask for ID in those days. It was just on what you looked like.
See, that was like the early skills of makeup application and costuming.
Exactly. and a delightful perm.
And luckily, the platform shoe was in fashion, so you could always appear taller than you actually were.
now the party's over. Answer time.
Avalon, a hit in 1982 for Roxy Music, which was one of the many gigs Karen and Sarah of Bananarama blagged their way into as underage huge music fans. So how then and when did you cross that paradigm from being a fan to wanting to be an artist yourselves and deciding to form the band?
Well, I was at the London College of Fashion studying journalism, and Karen was at the BBC in Cavendish Square
in the pensions department.
Yeah.
Excitement
and
all round.
Karen and I had met Paul Cook, ex-Sex Pistol, in a club, and we needed somewhere to stay after our hostel closed down, and we moved in above what used to be the Sex Pistols rehearsal room. So we would sort of sing and play bass and things with their band, which was called The Professionals by then.
Right.
we just had, we just really enjoyed it. And he said, why don't you get your own group together, which we'd never really thought about. So we made a little demo. He helped us record it. It's called Aye Amwana. And obviously involved Siobhan. And that's how it happened. So it was quite, it wasn't really planned, but it seemed like fun. We took a demo tape around to various clubs in London and just got little pieces in the NME and the Face. And then Terry Hall bought the single. It was a single.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it got to number 92. We were thrilled.
Of course, the late, great Terry Hall of The Specials, and by that point, Fun Boy 3, who obviously saw something in the band and bringing you into that. That was a stroke of genius.
Yeah, I think Terry liked the look of us, and it really kicked off from there. So, I mean, sort of the rest is history, really.
Yes, our first Ain't What You Do, It's the Way That You Do It on Top of the Pops was left a lot to be desired in the performance department.
Do you have a clear memory of it?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And unfortunately, it's sort of a lot of people as they get older, they don't sort of have their fashion mistakes and stuff like that thrown back in their faces. But people, the amount of times I'm out and someone say, "Oh my God, I saw you on, the retro sort of Top of the Pops that was on TV," and you think, "Oh God, not that one again."
Not the one with the heavy peeling makeup.
I do feel your pain. I can't bear to watch. I have, you get texts, don't you? Go, "No, you're on Top of the Pot," and you think, "No, we're not watching it under any circumstances."
Of course, we're all in the same boat.
There was a lot of scrunching going on. A lot. Oh my goodness! And do you remember who was on it with you? Other artists? Were you sort of gobsmacked to be, in the canteen drinking foul tea out of plastic cups next to famous people?
I do remember Led Zeppelin being in the green room, and
wow.
I mean, I didn't relate to them because they just seemed like really old people.
I get confused over who was on and who I was in the crowd for because I had a BBC card and we used to go off to TV Centre and see who was in the BBC. And then we'd just go down to the door and say, "Oh, we're with OMD," or who I remember once, and then whoever was in the bar, I think we said U2 once as well, and they'd let us in, like without a guest list, which was remarkable until they realised we were on every week. I'd like to see some of that old footage in the crowd every week.
Souvenir, OMD, Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, number 3 in 1981. And as you say, you sort with Fun Boy 3, Ain't What You Do was the first foray for you guys.
Yeah.
But it continued, didn't it, at quite a pace. You sort of in your own right with Shy Boy was just a few months after that.
Yeah.
And did it feel sort of like a very fastly accelerating process that suddenly, as you said, you were not just a big hit in the UK, but in the US as well?
It was just really fun. I mean, we used to go to clubs all the time and we would hear records like Imagination's Body Talk. And we said, well, we love that production. Who's done that? It was Steve Jolly and Tony Swain. So we went to them for our first album and they taught us, how to write really well and collaboration. So, yeah, it was great. And then MTV also happened at the same time, which is quite good for us. So we got to go to America, Australia, but it was just a whirlwind, really. But it was 3 girls having fun, and we were really young and just really enjoyed every minute of it, really.
Of course. Do you remember the first time? It would probably be, I would imagine, sort of after you left the UK and sort of travelling the world globally, the first time you had that sort of, oh my God, I can't believe I'm speaking to this person or standing next to this person, or those sort of moments?
I think meeting Michael Caine in New York, we were in the Russian tea room and he came over to us and introduced himself and said his daughter was a big fan. And we were just gobsmacked that it was Michael Caine. He's such an iconic brilliant, lovely.
And he knew us.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
just
that's amazing.
extraordinary.
And he's so big and tall. He just put his arms around us because, little girls from London. And he was just really, really lovely. That really stands out for me of all the people I've met,
Well, which really speaks to how big a splash you must have been making at that precise point with your music.
Cruel Summer, which was very early on in our career, made the top 10 in America. And we were just like so thrilled by that. We got to travel to the States, and I mean that's everything you've ever seen on TV and in films, and suddenly you're in New York with those sights and sounds, and you're coming over the bridge and seeing the skyline. It was just so thrilling.
1983, Cruel Summer, a top 10 hit all over the world for Bananarama, and there's a recently released 3am mix of that track available in celebration of 40 years since it first charted. And we will be back to continue the celebrations and our great conversation with Sarah and Keren of Bananarama next. And we are continuing our great conversation with Keren Woodward and Sarah Dallin of Bananarama. We were talking before the break about becoming very, very successful internationally. And for the most part, it sounds as though you were squeezing every drop of fun out of it that was available. Was it the fact, do you think, that you had this friendship that kept you so sure-footed, that enabled you to cope with becoming as famous as you did?
I don't know that we ever thought about being famous. The fame of it isn't why we did it, and it still isn't why we do it.
But it is a consequence.
There was sheer exhaustion. From the travelling. We were really, I mean, you'd get off, a plane in Japan and go straight to a TV studio to record at midnight, and then they'd put you on a breakfast one at 7:00 in the morning, and the jet lag meant you hadn't slept at all. And there were moments where I think all of us in turn had some sort of breakdown due to just being exhausted.
Yeah.
I don't think the people around us really understood how tired we were. Probably not helped by the fact that when we did have an evening off, we also went clubbing. So.
You didn't help yourselves.
Heady days indeed. And it was just that sheer joy of being in different places and the excitement of soaking up, different cultures, which we always absolutely loved.
And I also think, being famous from sort of teenagers, it's, you grow up in the public eye and you want to have a normal, youthful time. So you're not going to just think, well, I've got TV tomorrow, I best go to bed. I mean, you're young and you want to just live your life.
Friends. Yeah. And with friends, So... yeah.
And did you meet Robert De Niro?
Yes, we did meet Robert De Niro.
I think you know that answer.
That song was so, I don't know, it was so different.
Yes.
It was so, I don't know, ahead of its time. Robert De Niro's Waiting.
Yeah, it was originally going to be pull up to the bumper, Grace Jones.
That's what we asked.
We started with those sort of what are they called? Where it does the drum beat.
The little machine.
Yeah. So we got the drum beat
that does a drum
but it just
beat.
ended up as Robert De Niro's Waiting, and that goes down a storm now. I think people just love that title, and they always used to sing it to us in the street when it came out, and it's such a popular song.
When
now
we
for
do
us.
it live, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
The crowd just go absolutely nuts.
And know all the words.
It's joyous, yeah.
And what was your experience of Mr. De Niro?
Well, he called us up in our council flat in Holborn, and my boyfriend answered the phone and said, "Oh, it's Bob De Niro on the phone." And we were like, "Don't be so
Sure it is.
ridiculous." We were watching Brookside or something like that. So we went to the phone, and he's quite shy as well. So he wasn't like, "Hey, girl, how you doing?" He just was, said, "Do you want to meet for a drink?" Which we thought quite bizarre, but we did meet for a drink, and it was hilarious. But weird that happened.
Times, yeah. Very odd.
Some of the experiences, absolutely. And then did it all kind of rack up to another level again with Venus? Did that sort of elevate you even further up the road, do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was number one in America.
Well, all around the world, really.
Yeah, and we were out there at the time. We were in Prince's Club, First Avenue in Minneapolis, and he was there. And when they put Venus on, we were on the balcony looking down onto the dance floor. Everybody in the club ran to the dance floor. It was just incredible.
How amazing to be
Yeah.
for you to have that experience in his club. Did you have much sort of a chat with him?
No.
A few words.
He was a man of few words.
Yes, that's true.
He sort of proffered his hand and did those sort of doe eyes and said, "Lovely to meet you," or something. I think we were shy and he was shy. It was never going to go anywhere, that relationship.
Venus, a massive number one for Bananarama all over the world, pushing you to ever greater heights. A couple of years after that, Siobhan left the band and almost 30 years later returned to do, which I didn't realise, her first ever Bananarama tour. It's not a new story, bands splitting up and getting back together. It's a fairly well-worn rock and roll road that many bands go down. How would you characterise what happened that took you from being a threesome to a permanent duo?
Well, I think we were out of position. She left in 88, at the beginning of 88, and wanted to make different music. And then Karen and I went on to make Pop Life, which was very different to the poppy stuff we'd done in the 80s. So I guess we just grew apart and wanted to do different music. And then, as you say, in 2017, Karen and I, someone had suggested, why don't you do a reunion tour? Because Siobhan had never toured with us. We instantly, once she'd left, went on a world tour, which we did. Three of us had always wanted to do, but had never done it. And so she missed out on that world tour. So we thought, yeah, that sounds like a good idea in 2017. So it was always going to be just a one-off tour, but it was phenomenal. And it really was just so lovely to see her and spend time with her, and for her to experience what she'd never really experienced in the group that we'd started together.
I mean, we'd seen her throughout the years and hung out and on different occasions, and ended up having a little, dance round, kitchen discos, all seeing each other out. And I always said to her, you don't really understand what all started. I mean, Sarah and I have spent the last 30 years as a duo being a live act.
Yes.
It's one of the main things we do, going to all the festivals and touring, and we absolutely love it. And to not have experienced that, I felt like she really needed to experience what it was like to sort of be us now on stage, and how much all those songs meant to people.
And also with the sort of, the benefit of being a little bit older and wiser and having I think we can be very snotty to ourselves about what we do when we're younger, and then we have a bit more of an appreciation.
Well, yeah, and I can't say, I mean, I'd be lying if I said we left on the absolute best terms, because we didn't. But as you get older, you sort of think, what was that all about?
Yeah.
It's you sort of, you let loads of stuff go because you realise it's not important anymore.
Right.
And it was a very magical moment for us all, I think, the tour.
Do you remember the first song that you performed live when you did reunite as a threesome?
Yeah, we were standing backstage because there was behind us sort of gauze and it was going to drop, and Siobhan was so nervous, and we were less so because obviously we've been touring forever, but still it was about the three of us, and it was just really lovely. And when it dropped and we all walked down the stairs, it was just
there were very
fantastic.
emotional moments.
Yeah,
there were emotional moments from the minute we started rehearsing. We'd get quite teary at certain things because they meant so much at the time, and it was just, there was just so much warmth in that tour.
Well, I'm going to close with a question that we ask all our artists. Apologies in advance. It's a terrible question to ask a musician, but it's not your favourite song. I wouldn't be that awful, but it is a song that you each go to. It's your sort of, either it's a song of comfort when you're feeling down, or it's one that gets you jazzed and ready to go and inspired, or it always uplifts you.
It's an easy one for us. I mean, it's Don't Stop Me Now by Queen.
I'm gonna have myself a real good stop at all.
Oh, it's a brilliant one to end on. Listen, I'm so pleased for you, and and I don't know why, because it's not deserved, but I've got sort of a maternal swelling of the bosom of pride. It's got nothing to do with me, but it's just because it's women of my generation who are killing it.
Yes, but also, yeah, exactly. But you're interviewing us, so you're still doing your thing, and it is great.
Well, listen, look after yourselves.
You too.
And you.
Thanks, Jackie.
They are the top bananas. I think you'll find the wonderful warm company of Sarah Dallin and Karen Woodward of Bananarama. Such a great conversation.